Hi friends, welcome to Active Self-Protection Extra on John's Briefs today, back with my friend Tim Forshee. And guy has spent time as a prosecuting attorney, spent time as a judge, spent much time as a criminal defense attorney. And I'm gonna ask him today to talk with us about the dumbest thing he's ever seen a criminal, somebody in criminal court do as a defense attorney.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
Wow.
So now we're talking, okay,
That's
so you
a
do
long list of stuff,
but in particular, I want to narrow it down into the self-defense and firearms world, okay? So I know you've done other stuff than that.
Again, we didn't prep this, so the one that popped into my head, which I will not say was the most egregious, but it's the one that just popped into my head. So my client has a girlfriend, they're not married, and the girlfriend and her sister are arguing over recently deceased mom's estate. And mom has an old, like a 75 LTD with a, as I recall, 460 Ford engine.
Big pimp mobile.
Monster of yeah. And they had basically been stealing it from each other.
Oh.
They both had a set of keys, and so they would go over to each other's house at 3 a.m. and take mom's car, because that's my car. Mom wanted me to have that. No, mom, of course mom didn't have anything, so her case wasn't ever probated, so nobody resolved this issue. So these two sisters are squabbling with each other over this car that was probably worth $800.
Right.
So one night, sister A is sleeping with my client, boyfriend B. B definitely stands for Bubba. And he hears a garbage can that he had placed behind the car to act as an alarm if somebody tried to steal the car, go off. He hears it tip over.
Yeah.
He filled it with like rocks or something. So that was his burglar alarm. So he
give that guy a degree in Kentucky Fried Engineering.
Exactly. So here's my favorite part. And gun people will get this. Non-gun people won't get the significance of this. He's sleeping nude. He jumps out of bed, puts on a pair of unlaced combat boots, because of course.
I mean.
And then he grabs his firearm.
Oh, jeez.
And you might ask, well, what firearm would he grab? Well, of course, he grabs a Desert Eagle. Now, if it's a 50 AE Desert Eagle, I go, okay, I don't see the practicality of that gun, but I happen to own one. It's a very cool gun.
Okay, it's cool.
But he has a 44 Magnum. So it's kind of like, it's a wannabe Desert Eagle, basically, right?
But let's get the picture. Naked man in combat boots with a deagle.
And he's running, so he runs out the front door with his deagle, and he gives chase to the LTD that's heading down the street, and he empties the 8-round magazine of 44 Magnum at this car in his neighborhood. Thank God he's a crappy shot. Nobody gets hurt. The car's perforated a couple of times. There's ricochets everywhere, but nobody gets hurt. He gets arrested, and he cannot believe that he was arrested. He was completely in the right. That was his car. Well, really my girlfriend's car. And by God, I'm allowed to do that. And that's ridiculous that I'm in trouble for this. And as they took him to jail, he was screaming at me and the judge and the prosecutor. He did nothing wrong. And that's the kind of stupidity that is scary, because any of us could have been hurt by one of those stray rounds. But that's also the kind of stupidity that's paying for my mortgage. So I have to,
So I will say this. I know people are going to say, well, thank God I live in Texas, because in Texas, and okay, Texas does have a very unique statute. Texas Penal Code 9.42 does allow theft during the nighttime. And some folks are going to say, well, that guy, that sister committed a felony, and so she's in active commission of a felony, and I can act to stop a felony in progress with deadly force. What do you make of that argument?
You can't. That's wrong. And again, the Texas statute, I've gone to seminars about that statute, and I've heard both pros and cons, and there's lots of ways to interpret that. It's not as clear-cut, the bastard needed shooting, as we would say it is in Texas, Texas law. But that said, what I would say about that is that that's nonsense, okay? If you want to be a cop, go to the academy. I'll write you a letter of reference, okay? You're not a cop. And you can't shoot somebody because they committed a felony. You can shoot a fleeing person if you have reason to believe that they're being allowed to flee poses an immediate risk to a human life, okay? If you see somebody stealing a car and they're running away, you absolutely cannot, nor should you even think of using lethal force to stop that. On the other hand, if I just saw a guy stab you to death and stab that guy to death, and then with the bloody knife run towards another person, that poses an imminent risk to another human life.
Right.
And that would be appropriate then to use lethal force.
If somebody is jumping in a car that has my children in it.
That's the example I give all the time. If they're stealing my car from the driveway, why would I go outside? If they're stealing my car and my child's in the back seat, there's no power on earth that will stop me from doing that.
Right.
And that's a very subtle difference. It's not very subtle at all.
I don't know if I've told this story on the channel, but I actually had something reasonably like that I had at one point my pickup truck stolen out of my driveway. This is a number of years ago. We had, I got him back. He went on a bender for a couple days, crossed the border about 10 times in 2 days, and they found him over on this side.
I think you told me about this one.
Cleaned him up, brought him back to me. Okay, fine. And then a few months later, I heard somebody getting into my truck again. And so I grabbed the shotgun off of the wall. I went to the front door, told my wife, call 911, this ain't happening. Load the shotgun, put my hand on the door handle to go out.
And then you realized.
And I will say, I feel like God was like, stop a minute, dummy.
Thank goodness.
Whoa, what are you doing? Yeah. And I was like, I got to stop those guys from stealing my truck. And clear as a bell, I heard, okay, what you are doing is having a gunfight over an insurance deductible.
People don't understand that. By saving State Farm money and saving yourself $250, you're risking your life. How do you know that guy's not armed?
Right.
Why would you do that?
I'm going to go have an optional gunfight with an unknown number of assailants of unknown capacity and unknown provenance for the insurance deductible on my pickup.
You're saving a big company that has billions of dollars in assets some money.
And I went,
why would you? Yeah,
that's really stupid.
Right
thank God, right? So then I grabbed my kids, put them away. Well, cops showed up. It was a couple, I was teaching college at the time, and it was a couple of my students who were pranking my pickup truck. So I'd have been out there pointing a shotgun at guys who were just goofing on my pickup truck. So that's how I always say, don't
and then imagine
do that.
If somebody reaches for their pocket to show you their student ID and you think it's a gun and you shoot them.
And you shoot them.
Take that on to it. I mean, why? If it's stuff, guys, if you don't kiss it goodnight and say I love you to it, it's not worth risking your life for it. It's stuff. It is stuff.
So that's a pretty stupid thing. And this kind of stuff as a defense attorney, you get to see all the time.
All the time.
I'm going to tell another joke about this. I'm going to tell this story that we had here. So we had a seminar here for firearms legal protection not too long ago, and Tim was there. And we had one guy show up to that whose buddy brought him, I think, and he literally said this story. He said, what are you talking about? I can't point a firearm, whatever. He said, this guy road raged me, and then he made this big mistake, and so he pulled in front of me, and then we stopped at the light, and he got out of the car, and I took my .45 and I set it down on my dashboard, and he went back to his car, and I looked at him and I said, sir, you just committed aggravated assault. What you just did by the definition of the law is you put someone in fear of their life that you would shoot them for getting out of their car. That's a crime. And he was like, I don't think it is. And Tim stands up and says, sir, I just want to thank you for being one of those who has paid my mortgage these last 30 years.
Remember that.
And he shut right up.
I mean, at least he didn't shoot it, right? But
right.
Yeah, people that do stuff like that, it's just like, please, it's dangerous and scary. But like I said, they're paying my mortgage, so as long as nobody got hurt.
Now, our combat boot wearing, deagle shooting boyfriend, what ended up happening in this case?
He was charged with aggravated assault, endangerment, discharge of a firearm within city limits, all the usual.
Yeah.
But most alarmingly, the class 3. They probably could have charged him with attempted murder, class 2, but they tend not to do that unless it's an intentional first-degree murder.
Yeah.
So, but he ended up getting sentenced to, I believe, 7.5, and I think he ended up, he'll probably get out in 6.5. We don't really have parole in Arizona per se, but you do get good behavior days awarded for time spent, et cetera, et cetera. So he'll probably spend about 6 years in prison.
6 years in prison.
And people think, well, that's not much. And I think, well, that's 6 years. Try to keep your job, try to keep your house, your marriage, your relationship with your children.
No.
Done.
You've lost your rights. You can't. Don't get to vote anymore. You don't get to.
Your life is largely over. At that point.
Over what? Over an $800 pimp mobile.
And your pride with your girlfriend, I guess. Because by the way, the girlfriend dumped him during the trial.
Well, I mean, as one does.
Right.
Guys, please hear this stuff, and this is why go back and watch the series on being a good, sane, sober, moral, prudent person.
I love the way you put that.
That's a much higher standard than a legal person, right? And that's what we want to be. So don't be stupid, okay? Tim, thanks, man.
Absolutely.